My sister shoved me forward so hard my worn shoes skidded on the orphanage tiles. "Go with the lady," she chirped, breathless with excitement, like she was handing me a bouquet instead of a sentence. "Sister, go with the uncle and aunt. I'll give you this opportunity." The woman in front of us didn't look like an aunt to anyone. Pearl earrings, cashmere coat, the kind of stillness that made the air behave. Her eyes slid over my thin wrists, my hollow cheeks, the bruise blooming under my sleeve like an ugly flower. "Would you like to come home with me?" she asked softly. Only then did my heart remember how to beat. I wasn't 7 years old. I was 7 years old again. My sister and I had both crawled out of our graves and landed back on the same day, the same hour, the same orphanage hallway where futures were sold with polite smiles and signed paperwork. In my last life, she fought to be chosen by this woman, Lady Valmont, pressing her face up like a cherub, blinking those big, wet eyes. "Mummy, take me. I want to be your daughter." And Lady Valmont took her. My sister became Mira Valmont, and for a while she walked like the world owed her velvet carpets. She pictured herself as a rich little princess, imagined forbidden romance with the Valmont heir, and practiced the kind of sweet laughter that made strangers lower their guards. Then the reality came. Cold dinners, polite distance. A boy named Elliot Valmont, 3 years older, beautiful as a magazine cover and about as warm as one, who looked at her like she was a coat rack someone had dragged into his house. When the Valmont couple died, my sister tried to replace grief with delusion and seduction. Elliot's answer was simple. He had her thrown out. No love story, no inheritance, not a single coin. She was erased so cleanly, you would have thought she never existed. And me? I was adopted later that same day by a scholarly couple, teachers with kind smiles and locked doors. Everyone envied me. Everyone said I was lucky. Everyone clapped for my grades, my prizes, my perfect posture. No one saw the scars under my sleeves, the nights in a pitch-black storage room, the rule that I didn't eat until I solved questions they knew were beyond me. I survived anyway. I fought my way into the top university. I built a future out of sleeplessness and teeth-gritting patience. And when Adrian Grey, the heir of the Grey dynasty, pursued me in full public view, the entire city watched like it was a fairy tale. On the day my sister was kicked out, a billboard downtown live-streamed my wedding, and Mira, mad with regret, drove a car straight at me. That impact was the last thing I remembered before the orphanage tiles returned under my feet. Now, given a second chance, she didn't even hesitate. She pushed me toward Lady Valmont as if she were tossing trash into a gold bin. Fine. If she wanted my old life so badly, I would gift wrap it with a ribbon. I lifted my chin and let my voice tremble just enough to look harmless. "Yes," I whispered. "I'd like that, Mum." Lady Valmont's gaze softened. A hand, gloved, warm, closed around mine. Behind me, Mira darted close and breathed into my ear like a curse disguised as a blessing. "This time," she hissed, smiling so wide it hurt. "Adrian is mine. You're going to taste my misery. Just wait. You'll be kicked out too." The orphanage director frowned, watching the exchange like he'd smelled smoke. "Lady Valmont has always had high standards," he muttered to a staff member. Why would Mira give up the rich family this time? Because she hadn't grown a conscience. She'd grown fangs. Mira had been plump and rosy as a well-fed kitten in the orphanage. I'd been the one slipping her my bread, my fruit, my extra blanket. I'd mistaken her neediness for innocence. In my first life, she turned that kindness into entitlement. In this one, she turned it into a weapon. The Valmont car waited outside like a black promise. As I climbed in, I caught Mira's triumphant smile through the half-open window, bright and sharp as broken glass. I smiled back. My dear little sister. You have no idea what you just chose. The estate rose behind iron gates like a fortress built from money. Inside, everything smelled like polished wood and quiet rules. Lady Valmont led me through marble halls, speaking gently as if softness could stitch me into their world. From today, she said, your name is Ivy. I repeated it in my head. Ivy, something that grows even on stone. In the living room, a man sat with a newspaper like it was a shield. Mr. Valmont looked up, offered a thin smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Don't be nervous, he said. We'll be family now. Then footsteps, light, controlled, came down the stairs. Elliot Valmont appeared like the final clause in a contract. Clean uniform, perfect hair, expression empty as winter. Sky. His gaze flicked to me. One glance, no interest. Then he turned away as if I'd already disappointed him. I didn't flinch. I wasn't here for affection. I was here for air. For safety, for a room where the door wasn't a punishment, and Lady Valmont gave me exactly that, a sky blue bedroom, the same size as Elliot's, soft sheets, a desk by the window, and a nightlight that stayed on without anyone yelling at me for wasting electricity. At school, Elliot tossed words over his shoulder like scraps. Don't tell anyone you know me, he said, climbing into the car first, and don't call me brother. I sat beside him, buckled my seatbelt, and smiled like the smallest blade. Okay, I said sweetly. Big brother. His eyes widened, just for a second, an emotion slipping through the cracks. Then the classroom door opened, and there she was. Mira, now wearing the plain uniform of the teacher family, face paler, eyes darker, her joy from the orphanage. Already rotting into resentment, she stared at me like I'd stolen her oxygen. You did it on purpose, she whispered, voice shaking. You wanted me in that fire again. You got reborn too, didn't you? I didn't even pause. My name is Ivy, I said calmly. If you're sick, go get help. I walked past her and took the farthest seat in the room, where no one could grab my arm without crossing half the classroom. Mira stood frozen, trying to read guilt on my face. There was none, because this time I wasn't going to save her. This time I was going to let her live the life she begged for. Every locked door, every hungry night, every smiling teacher who loved discipline more than children. And when she finally understood what hell really looked like, I would be far away, growing quietly, patiently, like ivy on stone. But Mum, Dad, I wasn't like this before. That was the sentence that kept swelling in my throat like a seed that never got to sprout. Every time I tried to say it, my father's brows would knit, my mother's mouth would twist, and my little sister would blink at me with those bright, greedy eyes, like my pain was interrupting her playtime. So I learned the oldest survival skill in the world. I swallowed it. Each futile resistance didn't make me braver. It made me quieter, smaller. I began to fold myself away the way you fold a paper crane, crease by crease, until even my breathing felt like an offense. Maybe I really had changed. 5-year-old me reasoned one day, in the solemn way only children can. It's okay if Mum and Dad don't love me as much. They can love Mira more. She's adorable. I'm difficult. That was the day Mira insisted we play her favourite game again. She was the princess, I was the maid, and the maid had to personally make pastries for the princess. I stood at the kitchen doorway with my arms hanging uselessly by my sides, staring at the stove like it was a monster waiting for my hand. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what pastries even meant beyond the sweet smell drifting from shop windows I never entered. Why are you just standing there? My mother snapped, like my hesitation was insolence. It's acting. Why are you being so dramatic? My father didn't look up from his chair. Didn't we teach you before? Teach me. They said that word so easily, like it was something they poured into my head the way you pour milk into a cup. But all they ever taught me was this: when you don't know how, you still get blamed. I dragged a small stool to the stove, climbed up with my knees trembling, and twisted the gas knob the way I'd seen adults do. The flame didn't catch, but there was a faint sizzling sound, and then a sharp, sour smell that stabbed the back of my throat. I froze. I didn't know what that smell was. I only knew it didn't belong. Behind me, Mira wandered in, swinging her doll, trailing a cloud of sweet perfume that almost covered the stink, almost, but not enough. She hummed happily, oblivious, like the air wasn't changing. I stared at the stove. My hands felt far away from my body, like they belonged to someone else. After a long minute of standing there, my fear finally became heavier than my pride. I turned and went to find my mother. "Mom," I whispered. I didn't learn how to light it." She rolled her eyes so hard it looked like she was trying to peel me out of her sight. "So clueless. Wonder who you take after." My father stood up suddenly, scanning the house. "Where's Mira?" "In the kitchen," I said. His face tightened. "The kitchen is dangerous. She shouldn't get burned." "So you do know it's dangerous?" I thought, the realization landing like ice in my stomach. "Then why did you send me in?" They hurried into the kitchen, both of them moving fast for the first time that day, their worry sharp and specific. Never for me, always for her. The three of them made the space feel cramped, their bodies forming a tight triangle around Mira like a shield. I stepped back. Maybe if I went out, they wouldn't feel crowded. Maybe if I disappeared, the air would breathe easier. As I turned, I noticed the microwave light glowing faintly in the corner. Had Mira put her doll in there again? I took only 2 steps. The world cracked open. A violent explosion roared from the kitchen, so loud it punched the air out of my lungs. Heat slapped my face. A wall of flame surged like it had been waiting behind the cabinets, hungry and instant. The kitchen became a mouth. It swallowed everything. I remember my father's scream, raw, not like the angry voice he used on me, but something animal. I remember his body suddenly wrapped in fire as if the flames had chosen him first. I remember him shoving Mira forward with both hands, launching her out of that burning doorway like she was the only thing worth saving. Mira and I stood in the hallway, frozen in the same shock, watching our home turn into a furnace. Then Mira's cry ripped through me. High. Heart-wrenching, real. It snapped the spell. I grabbed her hand and ran. We burst out of the front door barefoot, the night air slamming into our burning skin, and our neighbour, Mr. Hale, scooped us up like we were 2 stray kittens and shouted for help until his voice broke. Police came, sirens, strangers, water, smoke. And when the fire finally died, I stared at the blackened frame of what had been a kitchen, what had been parents, what had been a life. I didn't feel grief the way children in storybooks do. I felt confusion, and underneath it, so small I hated myself for it, relief. I am not a good child, 6-year-old me decided later, sitting on a cot at the orphanage with a blanket that smelled like bleach. A good child would be crying. A good child would miss them. A good child wouldn't feel lighter when the shouting stops. That guilt clung to me like soot, and Mira, with eyes too sharp for her age, knew exactly where to press. She spent that year blaming me whenever the adults weren't watching, hissing that I was the one who killed Mum and Dad, that if I hadn't touched the stove, none of it would have happened. Is it really me? That question became a second heartbeat. It followed me into sleep, into hunger, into every corner of the orphanage. To make the question quiet, I did what I always did. I paid. I gave Mira my extra bread, my warmest clothes, the better side of the blanket. I became her shield without realizing I was building her teeth. 1 year passed like that, thin, grey, and obedient, until Lady Valmont arrived and the Chen couple after her. Adoption day. Smiles like knives. I thought, at 7, stepping into the Valmont car with my new name, Ivy, that at least now I could finally eat my fill. I didn't understand yet that hunger can wear many disguises, that even in a mansion you can starve, not of food, but of safety. A sharp flick to my forehead snapped me out of my thoughts. Ow! Elliot's voice followed, flat but oddly present. Ivy, are you even listening? I blinked and realised I was already sitting in the Valmont car, the city rolling past in watery streaks of light. Elliot sat beside me, one hand on his bag strap, his brows drawn together in that faint way he did when he didn't understand feelings but recognised their shadows. I forced a smile. I'm just tired. He looked away with a quiet scoff, the kind that tried to sound careless. Shh! Then cry if you want. There's no shame in not doing well on a test. It wasn't comfort, the way warm people gave it, but it was his version of reaching across a distance, and that alone made my chest tighten, because Elliot, who once couldn't even look at anyone long enough to care, was learning, slowly, clumsily, like someone touching fire and realising it doesn't always burn. It's okay, I murmured, more to myself than to him. That fire is far away. 2 lifetimes away, yet sometimes when the car passed a street lamp and the light cut across the window like a blade, I still saw it. The flash, the roar, my father's burning silhouette, Mira's scream, and I remembered what I'd promised myself in the orphanage, staring at the ceiling in the dark. If heaven gave me another chance, I wouldn't be the child who paid for love again. Not with my hunger, not with my silence, not with my life. Does Mira really think I cut ties with them in my last life because of Adrian? I said, my voice flat as winter glass. I didn't turn around, but I could already picture her expression, those eyes that loved to look wounded, that mouth that practiced sweetness the way other people practiced piano. I let the silence stretch just long enough to feel cruel, then added softly, almost kindly, "Congratulations." I paused, tasting the word like it was medicine. "Congratulations, little sister. You've reached another turning point in your life." My smile didn't reach my eyes. "And you're stepping into your next abyss." Behind me, Mira's voice rose into that familiar, sticky whine, half complaint, half flirtation. "Adrian," she pouted. "My sister always has that deadpan face. I don't want to see her at school." Then came his reply, smooth, bored, indulgent. He'd chosen her, at least for now, because Adrian Gray didn't collect people out of love. He collected them the way men with too much power collected antiques, to prove he could. Mira had endured a year to claw her way into the university, riding the advantage of memory like a stolen horse. She'd found Adrian early, charmed him early, tied herself to his shadow early. But even the Gray family couldn't dominate a top university the way Mira imagined. Paperwork still existed, rules still existed, professors, real ones, didn't care about a boyfriend's surname. And I had something Mira always underestimated. I had a life that was mine. I buried myself in the physics research team the way some people buried themselves in prayer. My mentor, Dr. Wren, was a national authority, brilliant, sharp, and stubbornly fair. He valued work, not gossip. He valued results, not surnames. If Adrian wanted to touch me, he'd have to think about the Valmont family first. And more importantly, he'd have to think about what it would look like to crush a public Valmont daughter right as the nation watched. Sure enough, one afternoon when I was deep in the lab and the world had narrowed down to numbers and glowing screens, Dr. Wren appeared behind me like a quiet storm. "Ivy," he said, studying my face. "Have you offended someone?" My fingers went cold on the keyboard. Mira, Adrian. I didn't answer fast enough. Dr. Wren's hand landed on my shoulder, steady, human. "Don't worry," he said. "You're my student. I know you don't go looking for trouble. If you're feeling wronged, don't swallow it. I'm here." For a moment, my throat tightened with something dangerously close to gratitude. I'm not competitive, I said, because it was safer than telling the truth. I just want peace. I don't want anyone disrupting my life. Dr. Wren sighed, eyes narrowing like he'd seen too many bright kids learn the wrong lesson. Sometimes, he said quietly, the more you run, the harder certain dogs chase. Don't keep backing up. If it bites, cut it off. That night, the news did it for me. My phone lit up with headlines, one after another, like a city skyline catching fire. Grey Air arrested at elite club mosaic video. Tax audit, grey group, organised crime, investigation. I watched a heavily pixelated video clip, blurry bodies, blurred faces, blurred shame, and my stomach turned. In my last life, I had been the blur. The couch dipped beside me. Elliot sat down without announcing. Himself, like he'd learned that loud concern was still concern. What are you watching? He asked. Why do you look sad? Sad. It was almost funny. Today was my 20th birthday, and the collapsing grey empire was the gift I'd given myself, one I'd been building quietly, legally, patiently, for months. A few documents, a few reports, a few sealed envelopes delivered to the right hands. I turned off my phone and forced brightness into my smile. It's nothing. Elliot hesitated, like words were heavy in his mouth. Then he opened a box and slid it toward me. A cake, not for the family, not for appearances, not for a crowd. A cake meant for me alone. My chest ached in a way I didn't have language for. I closed my eyes, letting the candlelight warm my lashes, and made my wish. I hope the stars and the sea won't betray our youth. I hope through spring, summer, autumn, and winter, we'll weather every storm together. When I cut the cake, I cut it into 4 equal slices. One for Mr. Valmon, one for Lady Valmon, one for Elliot, one for me. In the soft glow, I saw it, clear as a tide coming in. Elliot's smile, not practiced, not polite. Real. Then the trial came, and the nation watched it like entertainment. And Mira walked into that courtroom and sat in the victim's seat. She cried on camera, her voice trembling with perfect timing. She spoke about being deceived by Adrian's charm, about being drugged, about the private room in the club. She made herself pitiful down to the last syllable. For the first time, the public learned the woman in one of those mosaic videos was Mira Chen, opinions split like cracked ice. Some pitied her, some mocked her, some blamed her. But Mira was smarter than she used to be. She leaned into the moment, polishing herself into a symbol. The victim is not at fault, she said, chin lifted, tears shining. I'm a victim, but I will live in the sunlight. She was building a brand right, there in court, and even the judge looked tired enough to crumble. He cut her off coldly. Do not speak of matters unrelated to this case. Through the screen, I watched Mira's mouth tighten. Not grief, frustration. Later, she turned that heat into money. She started live streaming daily. Millions followed. If she'd stayed quiet, she might have coasted into a soft future. But Mira never knew how to stop once she smelled control. One evening, she appeared on camera with her cheeks swollen and red, like she'd been slapped. Fans exploded with questions. Gifts flooded the screen. She covered her face, eyes wet, and then she laughed. Actually, I have an older sister. My stomach sank before she even continued. She talked about cyberbullying, about calls, about cruel messages. She talked until the audience was fully hooked, until they were leaning forward, hungry for a villain. Then she gave them one. My sister was 5 when she burned our biological parents to death, she said sweetly. She's always been like that. Every sentence that followed was a twisted mirror of my life. Facts rearranged, motives inverted, blame poured neatly into my name. She claimed I'd stolen her adoption. She claimed I'd been abused because I was broken. She claimed I introduced her to Adrian like an offering, then she dropped the final hook, voice shaking with righteous pain. She put the doll in the microwave, she whispered, but she won't admit it, and now she's hiding behind the Valmont family. Comments flooded in like knives. Monster, murderer, die. The rich protect the evil. My fingers went numb as I stared at the screen. In my mind, the fire returned, not as a memory, but as a feeling, heat behind my eyes, smoke in my throat, darkness pressing in. I remembered the doll, ugly blonde hair, ragged dress, the cheap perfume Mira loved, and a small note stuck to it, written in crooked, childish letters. Ivy. Who killed their parents? I exhaled. Slow and steady, like Dr. Wren had taught me to do when the machine shook. Mira had become smarter. Her words were planted first, deep, preemptive, so any defense from me would look like excuses. Even if the Valmont family clarified, people would call it protecting their princess. A hand landed gently on my head. Elliot. Not a flick, not a knock, a quiet pat. Don't worry, he said, voice low. I'll handle it. I rose onto my toes and tapped his forehead lightly, playful on the surface, fierce underneath. Okay, I said, I trust you. Then I turned away from the noise and locked myself in the lab for a week. Not because I was helpless, because I refused to be dragged into Mira's script. When our project finally succeeded, Dr. Wren announced it with tears in his eyes. I blinked mine back and stared at the result glowing on the screen. I had finished the experiment I never got to finish in my last life. Half my birthday wish came true. The stars, the sea, youth that didn't betray me. Outside the lab, the Valmont Group stock dipped, public opinion pulling at it like tidewater. When I finally came home, Lady Valmont was on the sofa, shoulders slightly slumped, the kind of exhaustion that didn't come from work, but from worry. She stood the moment she saw me, forcing a smile. Ivy, why are you back? She asked softly. Are you tired? You've lost weight. I'll have the kitchen make bird's nest soup for you. I held her hand, warm, steady, and whispered, Mum, don't worry about me. How is everything at home? She squeezed my fingers. Home is fine. The men can handle the company. It's you. Don't look at that nonsense online. I nodded obediently, but inside something calm and sharp was already moving into place. Because while Mira screamed on camera, insiders were leaking quietly. Classmates were speaking up, screenshots were piling, timelines were being stitched, and I wasn't going to stand on the stage and plead innocence like a guilty person. I registered an account and posted a single line. Ivy, I won't fall into the trap of self-justification. If I'm guilty, let evidence speak. Within minutes, the official Valmont Group account reposted it. Valmont Group 5. We will not allow our little princess to be slandered. Evidence of defamation has been collected. The Valmont legal team is ready. Then Dr. Wren's verified account rose onto the trending page like a lighthouse cutting through fog. Dr. Wren, V. Congratulations to our institute for overcoming the heavy ion accelerator challenge today. Special thanks to my student Ivy and all researchers. I'm proud of you. The tide turned, not because people suddenly loved me, because truth, when it's backed by proof, has weight. And Mira vanished. She deactivated her account and disappeared like a thief who realizes the cameras have been on the whole time. But trouble has a habit of returning when winter arrives. Elliot started following me everywhere. Too close, too quiet. His gaze carrying that strange blend of caution and nerves. Why do you keep tailing me? I asked one evening, half amused, half wary. He looked away, scoffed, and pretended to be annoyed. I'm not. Yet his footsteps didn't slow. The year-end streets were crowded and bright. A touch of cold landed on my cheek. Snow. I stopped and looked up, and a memory hit so hard my bones went hollow. Today, the anniversary of my death in the last life. The first snow had come unexpectedly then, too, just like Mira's car. How could that be possible? Elliot's voice cut through the winter air, rougher than usual, as if the words were scraping past something inside him. Even your closest sister doesn't love you anymore, he said. I didn't answer, because I could still hear the echo of Mira's scream behind prison glass. I could still see that split-second terror in her eyes when I asked one simple question about a doll, a microwave, and a note with crooked letters. I finally saved everyone, Elliot added in a quieter tone, like he was confessing, not boasting. Snow fell thicker, soft as ash, and somewhere inside that snowfall, the past began to talk back. Mira's side of the story, I remember being happy. I remember believing my mum and dad were the best parents in the world. I remember my mother's hands, warm and busy, braiding hair. I remember my father bringing home 2 little cakes and smiling like he'd brought home treasure. They loved me. They loved me so much I thought love was a thing you could own. But then, why did they love her too? That was the first time I wanted something ugly. Not a toy, not a dress, not even a cake. I wanted all of it, all of their love, for myself. My sister should love me too. She should understand her job was to orbit me. So when I was 4, I copied something I saw on TV. The princess ordering the maid around. I pointed at the kitchen with my doll in my hand and told my sister to make snacks for me. She stood there like she always did, quiet, slow, annoying. Then there was a smell, a sound, and suddenly flames shot up like they were trying to reach the sky. The kitchen exploded. Mom and Dad were gone. It was her fault. She killed them. She stole them. She ruined everything. I hated her, but I was only 4, so my hatred was simple. It didn't need proof. It didn't need logic. It only needed somewhere to land. We were sent to an orphanage. My sister ate what I didn't finish and wore what I didn't want. That's how it should be. She owed me. She had to take care of me until I was adopted into the Valmont family. But the Valmonts didn't love me the way my real parents did. They had no extra warmth to spare. They had rules, schedules, cold faces. And Elliot, my so-called brother, wouldn't even look at me properly. I tried being cute the way I used to be at home. I tried blinking, pouting, clinging. He avoided me, like I was filth. Lady Valmont found fault with me all day long. Too loud, too needy, too greedy. My real parents would never have treated me like that. Then I saw her, my sister, Ivy, first place again, always first place, always shining. Why could she do it? Why couldn't I? Why could she marry someone like Adrian Gray? Why was I the one being thrown out? So I drove a car into her. And in the last seconds, I laughed. I laughed until my mouth filled with blood. Because I realised something. I got reborn. Thank goodness. A second chance, a second choice. This time I will be the top scorer. This time I will marry Adrian. This time I will have more love than my sister. Then I fell into hell. The Chen couple, a belt cracking against my back. Cold water poured over my face when I dozed off from exhaustion. A storage room that smelled like rot and cockroaches. And then a thought came, sharp and mean, like comfort. So Ivy suffered this in her last life. Good. So her glitter wasn't real. After all, I can endure. I can wait. Adrian will come. But she kept winning. Even from inside my misery, she kept shining. And the screen showed her again, on a podium, praised, honoured, celebrated. Why? She doesn't deserve it. She's still guilty. She still carries sins. So I chose a special day, the snow, the anniversary, the perfect symbolism. I turned the wheel toward her again and stomped on the accelerator. My mouth was full of blood, and I saw Elliot shield her. I failed again. In prison, she came to see me without an expression, and I hated her for that calm. Then she asked me one thing. Do you remember putting a doll in the microwave? What does she mean? But then I remembered. The TV, a voodoo doll scene, a childish curse disguised as a game. I picked up an old, discarded doll from the corner. I wrote her name on a scrap of paper. Too many strokes. Too hard. I got angry. I taped it anyway, crooked, careless, and threw the doll away. It landed in the trash, stinking. Then I remembered the perfume bottle my mum rarely used, the spray that made everything smell pretty. I wanted to show off. I wanted to win. I walked into the kitchen and saw Ivy standing there, dazed in front of the stove, like a target that didn't know it was a target. There were no pastries, so maybe I'd bake something else. I shoved the doll into the microwave. I pressed buttons the way I'd seen my mother do. Random, reckless, excited. The TV said if you write her name on a doll, she'll feel pain. I thought, I'll bake her. I'll turn her into a snack. So she'll never compete with me again. That was the truth. Not heroic, not tragic, just evil, small, and childish enough to be real. Elliot's side of the story. I have a new little sister. Her name is Ivy. Thin, small, quiet. Mum says I'm sick. She says my heart is cold. She says Ivy can keep me company. What is a sister? Can I kick her like a ball? I saw fear in my mother's eyes. Whatever. Ivy followed me everywhere like a shadow. Annoying, then she gained weight, fair and plump, more like a ball now. But I couldn't kick her. Dad said if I kicked my sister, he'd kick me like a ball. He called it empathy. I didn't understand empathy, but I understood consequences, so I stopped. Time passed. She cried when she sent me off to junior high. She smiled when she sent me to high school. And slowly, without my permission, my heart warmed. It wasn't dramatic. It was like a room that had been cold for years, finally learning sunlight exists. She got into my university. Her institute was far from mine. Every time I went to see her, her eyes lit up. And in those eyes I saw only me reflected back. Somewhere along the way, little sister became Ivy. Then I had a nightmare. That filthy thing, Mira, turned into Ivy and tried to touch me. Disgusting. I woke up shaking with a rage I didn't understand. I told myself it was just a dream. Throw it out. In the dream, my parents were killed. Ivy died in snow. I was left alone, turned into a machine, but then Mira called me brother with that same filthy smile in real life. So I tested it. I requested an internship at Valmont Corporation. I watched, I hunted quietly, and I caught the rival who wanted to harm my parents before they could. It wasn't just a dream, so I watched Ivy even more. This winter, my heart wouldn't sit still. I followed her every step. And when she asked why, I couldn't say the truth, not out loud. Kick me out if you want. You have no idea how many times I've been scolded by those old fossils at the company just to protect you. I saved you. Ivy, Ivy, Ivy. Look, my heart is warm now. Snow fell between us like a soft curtain. I held Elliot's hand tighter, feeling the heat of him, real, present, stubborn. I had 3 sets of parents in 2 lifetimes. I once worshipped my biological parents until worship turned into disappointment. I once survived the Chen couple's cruelty until survival turned into strategy. And now I gave all my love to the Valmonts because this time love wasn't something I begged for with silence. It was something we built together. Hand in hand with Elliot, under the first snow, I finally understood something simple. Lacking love is not shameful, but chasing love like bait, trying to get the most with the least effort, that's how people like Mira became what they were. And in the end, the fire always comes back to claim its maker.